The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's November the 26th, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented today by GameTime.co and the GameTime app, your ultimate destination for all your ticketing needs for any event, from this weekend's game at Syracuse, hopefully the ACC championship game next week, to anything else on the universe that requires a ticket. Game Time has you covered. We'll talk more about Game Time later in the show. But Matt, I think the news of the day today is really the news of yesterday afternoon, when we had the opportunity to talk to Mario Cristobal and the coordinators, get the lowdown leading up to, the vibe leading up to this week's Syracuse game. And man, I as usual, got a total kick out of Lance Guidry. Obviously fans have been making a big deal about how jovial he typically is on Mondays. And even when things go wrong in the games and the defense doesn't play well, he comes in smiling and laughing, and people seem to be a little bothered by that. So today, coming off a good performance on Saturday, Lance Guidry walks in and plays poker face and was very, very, very serious. But, here's the thing, okay? Yes, they had a lot of success Saturday. Anybody looking at that in real terms understands how bad Wake Forest is, that Wake Forest shut down its passing game, and Lance Guidry was able to tee off and, run his schemes the way that he likes to run his schemes, without having to worry about getting beat over the top and down the field. And, I've discussed on this show and in other places, and it's been very easy to see that Lance Guidry wasn't himself this year. Lance Guidry has not been calling games the way Lance Guidry in the past has typically called games, wielding many different blitz schemes, using his safeties aggressively to get after the quarterback and disrupt plays. And it was very obvious that with this set of personnel that he's working with this year, that he just did not feel comfortable playing Lance Guidry defense, and probably wisely. I mean, I think the sweet spot might be somewhere in the middle, but you're playing safety with Mish Powell, who's not fast, with Jaden Harris, who is busting a lot, and you're not probably going to feel real comfortable leaving those guys back there on an island while you try to disrupt things at the line of scrimmage. So it's been a much more vanilla approach to defense this season for the Miami Hurricanes, with mixed results. Great results on Saturday when Lance Guidry was comfortable. He could be aggressive. He was dialing it up. Mish Powell even mentioned to us that he was out on the field amazed at how well Lance Guidry was anticipating the game and calling defenses. And it was an absolute festival of happiness on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm sure Lance Guidry was very satisfied by that. But when we asked him why he wasn't his usual jovial self today, he said, well, you're not preparing for these guys we got coming up Saturday, Matt. And he's right. The challenge goes back to being immense. This Saturday, you have a Syracuse team that can throw the ball as well as run the ball, but when their quarterback is throwing it just about as well as anybody. But as you astutely pointed out in your film study that was on the website, I guess on Monday, and that we are continuing to look at here moving forward, you notice that he's not always the most consistent quarterback in the world. But to sum it all up, the bottom line is Lance Guidry knows, and the reality is Lance Guidry has his hands full this week preparing for Syracuse.
Yeah. I'm a numbers guy. It's just weird. Shannon Dawson I'm sure we'll talk about him, but he was trying to show fans how great his offense has become, stressing how he took over the number 100 offense and turned it into the number one offense himself, which is great. So I figured I'd look at Lance Guidry because I figured Shannon Dawson was throwing Lance Guidry under the bus. Lance Guidry took the number 1 offense and turned it number 1 defense and turned it the number 100 defense. But the truth is, Lance Guidry's defense this year is statistically better than last year, which sort of throws out Shannon Dawson's argument too, right? Because everyone knows this defense isn't better than last year's defense. I mean, last year's defense was 24th in I'm looking at it right now. So last year's defense was 24th in total defense, 42nd in scoring defense. This year, 14th somehow in total defense, and also 42nd in scoring defense, the two numbers that matter the most. Somehow they've statistically gotten better, and fans are quick to point this out, which is true. Look at the ACC numbers, right? And the NCAA doesn't break it down by conference. You can't just, say, okay, let's look at every, I don't have time to look at all 133 teams in the country, how they did in their conference games, and then rank Miami. But I guarantee you Miami is in the bottom half, okay, for scoring defense when it comes to conference games. Now, with that said, like in France, right, they're selling chateaus for $1, and these Americans are buying them for $1, then realize they have to put $2 million into it to just have plumbing, And like that's sort of Lance Guidry's defense, right? It's supposed to be a $2 million defense, but at times it looks like a $1 defense, and you just don't know what you're getting from game to game, from series to series. You look at the first 2 series against Wake Forest, and it was fireable defense. I mean, it was as bad as it gets against a really bad team. And then Mish Powell gets a pick 6, and like everything's fine all over again. So it's a little schizophrenic on defense. And I would argue, Lance Guidry was quick to point out that he didn't do anything different the third series. Just his players seemed to play harder. His players seemed to play better. He wasn't calling. It wasn't like all of a sudden in the third series, he's like, okay, we're changing the defense. Let's do this. Let's do that. We're going to this. We're going to that. Forget this, forget that. No, it was the same stuff, but the players performed. And that's why a lot of times fans, I think, blame coordinators unnecessarily and credit coordinators unnecessarily, because what Shannon Dawson failed to say when he talked about how he turned the number 100 offense into the number 1 offense is if Cam Ward's not here, he don't have the number 1 offense in the country. That's not Shannon Dawson that did that. It's Cam Ward that gave Miami the number 1 offense. It's not always the coordinators, it's not always the players. It's usually a mixture of both. And in this case on defense, I think the players maybe have a little more to blame than Lance Guidry. Now, with that said, they should be taught better. They're taking bad angles. They're missing, until last weekend, they were missing a lot of tackles, missed alignments. I can't think they're coached to play the way that we've seen, right? So the coaching has to be clearer, but the players also have to understand it better and put in the time if they know they don't understand it. It's just like studying for a test. Anybody out there who's ever studied for a test, they know if they're prepared or not when the test comes. If you're freaking out and cramming the night before, you're not prepared. And I have a feeling a lot of Miami defensive players knew going into games they're not prepared. They don't know what to do. They don't know quite what to expect from another team. And Lance Guidry said Syracuse is going to throw the kitchen sink at Miami this weekend. The truth is Syracuse won't. Syracuse has been very successful doing what it does. It doesn't do a ton of pre-snap motion. Kyle McCord, the reason why Syracuse has 3 of the 4 receivers with the most, contested catch rates, right? The reason why that is because Kyle McCord does not go through progressions. He sees the first read and he throws it. And the guy's often covered, right? Because that's why you go through your progressions. Oh, this guy's covered. Let's look at the next guy. Let's look at the next guy. He's covered. He throws it anyway. That's why 3 out of the 4 receivers in the entire country contested catches are from Syracuse. It's not a good thing. Like Miami coaches want you to think, oh, they're so amazing, these receivers, they have the highest contested catch rate. It's because Kyle McCord constantly throws into coverage because he doesn't read defenses correctly, and he throws to the first read all the time. So it's on Lance Guidry to recognize that, to make sure they have press coverage, not off coverage, because McCord loves to get the ball out fast. And when he doesn't get out fast, he's either sacked or he throws interceptions or doesn't know what the heck to do. And you see it over and over on film, because I've looked at this film already for a couple of days now. And that's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. Take away the first read, you beat Syracuse, you're in the ACC title game. And that's when Lance Guidry is going to have a real problem. Because for those of you that have had time to watch SMU, if you think that Rhett Lashley's pre-snap motion was complicated before facing Miami, just wait till he looks at Miami's defensive film and finds all the ways to use pre-snap motion these other teams have in different ways to create all the hands up and the what's happening confusion. Miami will need 10 timeouts on defense to be able to match up with what SMU has coming for the Hurricanes. So I don't think Syracuse is going to be, after watching Kyle McCord, it shouldn't be as big a challenge for Miami's defense as perhaps people think it is, because Kyle McCord is actually ahead of Cam Ward now. Syracuse is ranked ahead of Miami in passing offense. As long as Lance Guidry plays it correctly and recognizes the guy doesn't go to his second read and just take away the first read, look at their plays, figure out where that first read usually is. And generally, it's either a deep shot down the sideline or a quick hitter down the middle. It's one of those, and take those away. Take those away and rush 4 because he does great when he's blitzed. And bam, that's been the formula to stop Kyle McCord. It's what Pittsburgh did. It's what other teams have done that have slowed down Syracuse.
It's easy.
It's simple.
Simple.
4 plus 8 equals 13.
All right. So let me, I was taking notes here while you were talking. All right. So it was funny. And of course, there's somebody in the YouTube comments that picked up on it. But so I said to Lance, Lance, listen, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I've been watching your defense all year. And this is one of the few times this past Saturday that I can honestly say that it looked like Lance Guidry defense out there, what you like to do. And he got a little defensive by that, over that. And, but the bottom line is Wake was an easier assignment. He was able to dial it up very well. The players were playing with greater confidence, and the confidence became contagious. Okay. But he also astutely noted that it has nothing to do with what's going to happen this Saturday when he has to, a much greater challenge in Syracuse's offense. So that's one thing. So why would this game on Saturday? We'll assume I'm right here, okay? And listen, we've watched Lance Guidry now for 2 years. He was back to calling the game on Saturday the way we saw him call it last year. Okay, so why would that be? Well, I noted the safeties earlier. I mean, Cam Kinchens and James Williams were not great at all times last year, but I think we would all agree.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm going to catch crap for that too. But listen, I keep it real. I'm honest. Okay, I'm sorry if certain people with different ideas get offended, but they weren't great. They were okay. And it gave Lance Guidry the opportunity to be aggressive with his calls. Okay. So he doesn't have that at safety this year, for starters. His cornerback position is not as good this year as it was last year. His defensive line, Tyler Barron, has disappeared since week 2. Mesidor was playing inside, out of position when he should have been playing outside. Bain is coming off an injury. It wasn't in supreme shape, has gained weight, is not as quick as he was a year ago, and just hasn't been as good of a player this year as he was last year. He's still very good, and he will be very good in the future, hopefully when he moves to defensive tackle. But it hasn't been as reliably great this year as it was last year. They've been kind of average elsewhere on the line. Francisco Manoa was coming off labrum surgery, and his arm had not regained its total strength, and he was not playing anywhere near as well this year as he did a year ago. Jalen Alderman was banged up early in the year. Wesley Basaint's been hit or miss. It hasn't been rock solid at any layer of defense this year for Lance Guidry to feel comfortable standing out there naked and blitzing like crazy and trying to put pressure on and leaving his guys on islands. And it probably wouldn't have worked. I mean, I think there's times maybe he could have been a little more aggressive, like I said, but it probably would not have worked very well. And that's why Lance Guidry has not, for the most part, looked like Lance Guidry. But, what I wonder about, Matt, is can they stop Syracuse, a much more explosive offense, one of their tougher assignments of the year? Can they stop Syracuse without negative plays, without disrupting things in the backfield, by only rushing 4 and dropping everybody else? Is that the formula to contend with this Syracuse offense?
I think the turnovers are going to be the key because, creating negative plays, second and 11, third and 12s are nice. But, if you get them in second and 8, I'm fine with that. If you get them in third and 5, I'm fine with that. You just got to get your chances. And, I think part of the problem with Lance Guidry is, the community, right? They stress the communication. And this is an example of Lance Guidry's communication, okay? Some media member is fixated on what these guys are eating for Thanksgiving. And he asks everybody he can find, this media person, what are you eating for Thanksgiving? Forget the Syracuse game. I need to know what you're eating on Thanksgiving, right? So
Mario says picadillo.
Yeah. So he asks Lance Guidry. Lance Guidry says his favorite thing to eat on Thanksgiving is
a whole menu.
He says his favorite thing to eat on Thanksgiving is dressing, which I'm thinking he eats salad dressing. Does he mean he dresses up for Thanksgiving? Like, what is dressing? I've never eaten dressing.
He keeps
talking about dressing. It's some casserole dish of some kind. I had to look it up. But
it's stuffing. It's
actually not stuffing. It's some weird turkey dish.
It's their version. Anyway. It's the southern, the Louisiana Cajun version of stuffing. Yeah,
correct. So maybe whatever. Maybe it's a kind of stuffing. Whatever. But the whole point is he's got this whole different vocabulary. He's like the James Joyce of defensive coordinators. For those of you that know who James Joyce is, he literally wrote a famous book, one of them being Ulysses. He created his own language, didn't tell anybody what it is, and wrote a book in that language. And to this day, people are still trying to understand the exact, they've written dictionaries with his words and what they actually mean, and people are still trying to figure this stuff out. Like, some of these words Lance Guidry uses, he's like James Joyce. Like, are the players going to say to him, hey, coach, what do you mean by dressing? Or they're just going to say, okay, and pretend they know? Because that's what, I've taught journalism classes. When you tell your students something and they say, oh, yeah, of course, I know that. Yeah. They don't. And my concern is Lance Guidry says a lot of things like this. Do you understand, guys? Yeah, we got it, coach, we got it. And they have no idea what the hell he's talking about. That's my concern. But yeah, the negative plays, I mean, they're nice, but Miami doesn't have to have negative plays. I think to get negative plays, you have to be really aggressive, blitz safeties and corners. I do not want them to be blitzing corners and safeties. So get them in 3rd and 5s, 2nd and 8s, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you. I don't know that they need to take so many chances against this team or want to. I think they just got to be sound on the back end. Guys have to know their assignments. They can't be busting coverages like they've been at many times this year. Miami on defense Saturday has to be rock solid, or this thing is going to be an old-fashioned shootout on the road that they might not win. Okay. So very, very important that the guys in the secondary put in the time this week. I know it's Thanksgiving and there's some distractions and maybe families want some of their time or whatever, but very important that these guys on the defensive side of the ball understand their assignments inside and out and are executing at a very high level on Saturday.
Yeah, by the way, you understand what I was saying earlier? Syracuse is not going to change what it does. Like, it doesn't do a lot of crazy pre-snap motion. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why I think it's not the hardest offense to prepare for. Just they have really good players. But in terms of scheming it up and this and that, like, it's not as hard as what they had to try to do with Georgia Tech, for instance, like on the spur of the moment, trying to figure out they never apparently coached guys how to stop the option, stuff like that. Syracuse isn't going to start running plays they haven't run before in this game. Like, Miami's seen everything they've done. Syracuse has been usually successful with the passing game, not so much with the run game. And by the way, I was surprised. I think was it Lance Guidry? He called them a primarily passing team. They're literally 50-50 run pass. Literally, like to the dollar, they're 50-50. I mean, they have one more pass than run on the entire season. But they've been so much more productive in the passing game than the run game that it seems like they're a pass-happy team. They're not. So I hope Lance Guidry will actually look at the stats and not just assume they're passing all the time. This is not a 70% of the time pass the ball team. This is a 50-50 true 50-50 run pass offense. So, they need to be prepared for both. And I love having Akeem Massador on the edge. So glad Lance Guidry took my Good Morning CaneSport advice and did that, because I think that makes such a big difference. And, it's funny also, Mario's asked, is Tyler Barron hurt? Like, what happened? They're like, no, just a coach's decision, Where was Deani Hill, coach? Yeah, coach's decision. He'll probably play this week, Like, good for them. Good for them. You don't play guys who don't produce. I would rather have a freshman in there who doesn't understand what they're doing than a guy at defensive end who refuses to set the edge and just wants a sack every time, you know? So good for them for making the changes they need. That's a sign of a good coaching staff, people. Like, we'll blister I will blister the coaching staff, Gary won't, when I feel it's necessary. Give some credit where credit's due. They made the personnel adjustments that they needed to this past game, you know? CJ Clark hadn't done real well, but they took the chance, started him inside. He did fine. Messidor is so happy it ended. You could see he's playing happy. You know, it makes a big difference. Just a player who wants to be doing something versus doesn't want to be doing something. It's like forcing a child. This isn't about Akeem, but in general, if you try to force a child to do something they don't want to do, it's probably not going to work out well. And that's true for student athletes, for adults, for senior citizens. Any human being you try to force to do something they don't want to do, it's not going to be done at a real high level. Akeem Messidor did not want to be a defensive tackle. Now he's where he wants to be, and he looks much better for it.
And he's much more effective on the outside. He's not built to be a defensive tackle. He was a defensive tackle at West Virginia
3 years ago and was pretty good. He just didn't want to play it. So he can play tackle if he wants to, believe me.
He's much better suited to be outside. He's not built like a tackle. All right, let me take a moment here and talk about Game Time, because I know a lot of people might be looking, from the New York area and stuff to make the trip over to Syracuse for the game this weekend, and you need tickets. And there is no better place to go when you need tickets than GameTime.co or the Game Time app. And the biggest reason is they have this new feature called Game Time Picks that sorts through all the mud, so to speak, and brings you the best tickets at the best location for the best price. And buying tickets does not have to be complicated. And Game Time has this little toggle switch that they'll give you all-in pricing, so you can weed through fees as well and walk away with an immediate picture on where your seats are, because they'll show you with a graphic of your seat view how much they're going to cost, because they will give you that all-in pricing, and just gets you basically to the front door in absolutely seamless fashion. And there's so many other reasons to use Game Time. They have lowest price guarantees, or they'll credit you 100%, 110% of the difference. They have event cancellation insurance, where if the event gets canceled, you get a refund within 24 hours. They've got job loss assurance, where if you buy a ticket to an event, let's say in advance, you lose your job in the middle, you tell Game Time, hey man, I've been laid off, I lost my job, I really need the money, I can't go to this event, can you please refund me the tickets? They will do it with no questions asked. They've got you covered. So what you need to do if you need tickets to theater, concerts, sporting events, anything you need a ticket for, you go to gametime.co, not .com, it's .co, or download the Game Time app. And when you find your seats and you go to make your first purchase, use the code ON3, ON3, and they will give you $20 off your first purchase. So gametime.co, the Game Time app, code word ON3, you get $20 off your first purchase. We will hope you have the greatest time no matter what event you choose to go to. If it's time to go to an event, it is Game Time all the way. And we thank Game Time for sponsoring Good Morning CaneSport all season long. I think they'll be around for maybe another week or so. But anyway, thank you to Game Time, and make sure you check them out. Okay, so Matt, you talked about the offense, and you mentioned that the reason that the offense is number one in the country is because of Cam Ward. And I'm not going to argue about that. I mean, I feel very comfortable with your thought that if Cam Ward were not the quarterback, and say they were playing this year with Emory Williams or Reese Poppenbarger, that with the exact same set of personnel, they would not be number one in the country. But I wouldn't underestimate how good they might be, though, because you've got 4 running backs playing at an extremely high level, a competent offensive line. I'm not sure it's like a pure power offensive line like people want to believe it is, but it's a good offensive line. You got 4 running backs, like I said, playing at the top level. You got 3 tight ends capable of doing just about anything out on the field. You have 4 wide receivers playing at an extremely high level. With all respects to the people that want to keep disrespecting Sam Brown because he dropped a couple balls this year, he's still a very, very, very good receiver, and I hope he comes back next year. I think he could be an asset to this team next year. But you still have a whole offensive football team playing at an extremely high level. And I think they still would have been pretty good on offense. Number one in the country, maybe not, but I still think that they would be pretty good. And they also, we're so focused on the defense because of Syracuse's offense, but the offense has a challenge this week as well, because they're going to probably need to score at worst in the 30s, Matt, if Miami's going to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And, to your point, if Cam Ward's not the quarterback, other teams are probably going to be able to take away the run or try to take away the run a little bit more, right? They have to really respect Cam Ward's passing ability, and I'm not sure they would respect Emory Williams as much. And again, we don't really know. Like, you could always say, Emory Williams is going to be this amazing quarterback, but we just don't know right now if that's where he is today or not. And I think it would be him over Reese Poffenbarger if push came to shove, and they needed somebody to start if Cam Ward wasn't here anyway. But listen, we have Cam Ward, and there's no doubt he's the number one quarterback in the country. You could look at the Heisman odds to prove it. So to argue that they'd be just the same, just would run the ball more, like, that's ridiculous. They wouldn't even be close to the same offense. They would have lost at least 2 more games. And Syracuse averages giving up 28 points a game to opponents, and now they're playing the top quarterback in the country, the top offense in the country. So, yeah, I mean, 30 points, they should score more than 30 points just based on the averages. I know they've had some, not great drives the last couple of games on offense, and they've been forced to earn it, which honestly, it's not a shock that other teams have finally figured out a way to slow down Cam Ward, which is, not to blitz him constantly. He's very good against the blitz, just like Colin McCord is. You blitz them constantly, they're going to score very, very quickly. They've realized, lay back, make them earn it. And that's why Miami's having these 14, 16-play drives. And the problem with that is they are one of the most penalized teams in the country. And if you have even a false start or an illegal formation on a drive, it's a lot harder to convert a 2nd and 13 than a 2nd and 8, right? A 3rd and 10 instead of a 3rd and 5. And that's what honestly has cost them some drives, along with turnovers, right? Cam Ward interception, Xavier Restrepo fumble, turnover, penalties cost them, put them back a couple of drives. You have 4 drives now that are basically shut down because of those issues. And you only have 9 drives in the whole game because the other team's driving and taking time off the clock. You're driving and taking time off the clock. That's half your possessions. So you now only have, the chance to get 28 points. So at some point, they need to figure out the penalty problem. I mean, I could look at the rankings right now, but I think they're in the hundreds in teams being penalized. And I don't understand how a well-coached team, that's the sign of a well-coached team, right? Here it is. 116th in penalties out of 133 in the country. People generally say that poorly coached teams are the ones that have the most penalties called on them. So that's not a real good reflection on the team. But what this team does have is a tremendous amount of ability, of just pure athleticism. It's why we, normally before a big game, we do who has the edge at each position. We've only done it once or twice this year, right? Florida game and who was the other tough game? There was one of Louisville, I think we did it for, right? Because otherwise, every game they would literally, it's just Miami, Miami, Miami. It's like we look like homers because there's no position at which they have not outclassed the other teams in all these games. And Syracuse the same way. There's no position on the field at which Syracuse outclasses Miami. Their defense isn't particularly good. Maybe you could argue for the secondary to maybe be even or in Syracuse's favor, but that's about it. So, just in terms of talent. And so how can anyone sit there and say, this is a really tough game? Miami's favored by double digits for a reason. The experts understand that Miami out-talents Syracuse everywhere. The only thing that can stop Miami right now is being unprepared and having penalties and making dumb mistakes. That's it. Right. If they just play a normal game, they're going to win easily. And that's why I keep predicting wins every damn week, because I know they're better than the other team. They're clearly better, but these teams they win by 3 points, by 2 points. They get upset at Georgia Tech because they do dumb things. And I can't predict those. It's not my fault. If I get a prediction wrong, it's not my fault. It's their fault. Period.
I'm sure they think you do dumb things too, but
that's fair.
Your point is taken, and we get it. Okay, there's some other cool stuff on the website today for you guys to check out. Signing day now essentially is about a week away. I guess we'll say 8 days away. And Miami's trying like gangbusters to flip a few of these, key guys that got away during the course of the cycle. And we have a story talking about how the resurgence of the Florida Gators is impacting Miami's ability to turn this at the end. And, you look at a guy like Ben Hanks, who we also do have a story on the website today. DJ Pickett is another one. Vernell Brown is one. Dallas Wilson's another. There's, 4 or 5 guys out there that are committed to different places that Miami is also now having to fight Florida to be number 2 on their list going into these final days of recruiting, where they obviously are trying to flip them into number 1. So we've got a story on that on the website. We got a story on Ben Hanks on the website, who talks about how Miami is continuing to try to sway him. And then we've got a few stories on 2026 prospects who have been hot on Miami. You got a 4-star edge rusher, Catrell Webb. We have a story on him today on the website. Another weekend visitor we caught up with is Boca Raton 4-star running back Javion Mallory. Don't miss his take. And then we have a story with 2026 4-star defensive lineman Jermaine Kinsler. He's the brother of current Cane Tommy Kinsler. He's high on Miami's radar and updates his status as well. Great chance that he'll be in the recruiting class next year when we turn the page to 2026, and we will be bringing you more recruiting coverage here as the week goes on. But that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. And if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please come on over to our website and sign up. Your subscriptions do allow us to do what we do every day to try to make your fan experience the best it could possibly be in the better than anybody else in the entire country. We need your support. Come sign up at CaneSport.com and join our community of fans. We don't think you'll be sorry. We got some good introductory specials up there now that you'll see when you get there. Take advantage of it and become a CaneSport.com member. And if you're on YouTube right now, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It does help us with the algorithms at YouTube in growing our audience. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. We thank you so much for joining us today. Program note, tonight, 8 o'clock, CaneSport Live is back in action. Looking forward to talking to all the fans about this past weekend's game, what they think of the Syracuse game and the big picture. Then Wednesday night, we will have a Thanksgiving Eve edition of the Lamar Thomas Show for you as well. So lots of programming for you guys on YouTube and elsewhere this week. Have a great day, everybody.